In the shadows of our first gathering, my cousins mocked. She is the small flame, not the wildfire. I smiled softly. Time crawled forward, empires rose and fell, and at the end, it was my fire that still burned on the mountain peaks while their lineage flickered out into winds that carried no name, no memory, and no echo. I still remember the way the wind felt that night behind my grandfather's barn. Cold. Sharp. I mean, like the people I shared my last name with. I was 12. My cousins were older, richer, louder, shinier. We were all gathered at the ranch just outside Missoula, Montana, for what they called the gathering. My grandfather's idea. A tradition, he said, to keep the bloodline strong. To remind us who we were. The Summers family. Descendants of oil, cattle, and old money. Legacy people. My father, Joel, was the youngest of 5 brothers. The only one who married someone from the wrong side of the state. My mother, Maggie, was a waitress from Lolo. Met my dad when he stopped at a diner after a hunting trip. She had no pedigree, no fancy last name, no family crest. Just thick hands from double shifts and a tired smile. They never let her forget that. And they didn't let me forget it either. That year, the gathering brought in family from all over. Seattle, Austin, Charlotte, even someone from D.C. It was the first time all the second-generation cousins were in one place. I was the youngest, smallest, quietest. No one cared much when I showed up. The adults were inside, drinking and bragging about stock portfolios. The kids, if you could call a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds that were out by the bonfire. I sat near the edge, knees pulled up, arms wrapped tight, just trying to feel like I belonged. That's when Briar spoke. He was 22, golden-haired, tall, and already working at some corporate law firm in Seattle his father got him into. His little brother Tate, the football player, leaned over and whispered something. Then Briar laughed, loud and sharp. "Don't worry about her," he said, nodding at me. "She's the small flame, not the wildfire." I got a good laugh from the others. Ivy, who later ended up doing time for tax fraud. Preston, who cheated on every girlfriend he ever had and still can't keep a job. Even quiet Elena smiled, though she avoided my eyes afterward. I remember I didn't cry. I didn't say anything. I just looked down at the fire, watched how it moved, how the small flames danced first. Gentle, controlled. But it was always the smallest flames that set the forest going, not the big ones. Big ones burn out fast. They eat too much too soon. But small flames? They learn. They wait. So I waited. I didn't go to the next gathering. Or the one after that. My dad stopped getting invites after he turned down a shady investment opportunity Briar's father pitched. Something about farmland deals in Wyoming. We heard later a few of the cousins lost money in it, but no one ever talked about it openly. That's how my family works. Everything dirty gets buried fast. I finished high school early, took community college classes at night, got a full ride to the University of Montana. No one from the Summers side reached out. I didn't expect them to. They'd written us off. Small flames don't matter. But while they were out getting trust funds and shiny LinkedIn titles, I was working, learning, studying people, watching how my family moved money, made deals, and hid their failures. Most of them had never earned anything. It was all handed down. They were just carrying someone else's torch, thinking it was their own fire. By 27, I had a degree in business and another in finance. I was working for a small firm in Billings, handling estate portfolios. I saw how old money families moved assets, and I started building something of my own. Quietly, I kept my last name. People in Montana remembered it. That opened doors. But I never reminded anyone who my cousins were. I let people make their own assumptions. It worked. I started a private investment group. Quiet, clean, and just out of sight of the people who'd mocked me. Within 4 years, we were managing mid-sized real estate portfolios and farmland acquisitions across 5 states. And then I saw an opportunity. The Summers Ranch, my grandfather's pride, was in trouble. I found out from a title agent that back taxes hadn't been paid in 3 years. One of the holding companies Briar and Tate set up after Grandpa died had defaulted on a loan. Sloppy. They thought the land was untouchable. It wasn't. So I bought the debt. Quietly. Through shell companies, legal screens, and silent partners, I began buying pieces of their legacy. parcel by parcel, field by field, until the land under the family's name was more mine than theirs. And then I made my first move. I sent eviction notices to 3 tenants on the Summers land, people who had leased barns and pastures for decades. My cousins never bothered to renew their leases, never did the paperwork right. The tenants were mad. They called Briar. He called me. "You can't do this," he said. "I already did," I said. "Check the filings. You don't own it anymore." There was a long pause. Then that same laugh. "The same one from the bonfire. You? Seriously? You're nobody." "Maybe," I said. "But the nobody just bought the mountain your name was carved into." He hung up. After Briar hung up, I expected pushback. Lawsuits, threats, something loud. But instead there was silence. That's how I knew I hit the mark. A week later I started getting anonymous calls. Hang up. A car parked across from my office for 2 days straight. Typical scare tactics. Sloppy ones. I logged every call. Took pictures of the plates. Had a friend at the sheriff's office run them for me. The car belonged to a holding company tied to Tate. Predictable. I didn't flinch. I pushed harder. I found an accountant who used to work for the Summers family when my grandfather was still alive. He left bitter. Said Briar fired him to bring in modern people who understood how to move money creatively. I asked him for one thing: paperwork from the old trusts. Turns out, Grandpa had a clause in his will that the cousins never read closely. The land wasn't supposed to be split up. It was meant to stay whole, under one steward, someone who showed measurable responsibility and loyalty to Montana. That clause was ignored when the cousins broke up the property into LLCs. That gave me legal standing. So I filed a quiet title action in Missoula County. Cited the will. Cited their mismanagement. Cited their fake leases, bounced checks, unpaid taxes. Their attorney didn't even show for the first hearing. 2 months later, I was the legal owner of over 70% of the original Summers ranch land. That's when Ivy showed up at my office. She looked tired. Thinner than I remembered. Less smug. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't even say hello. She just stood in the doorway of my office and said, "Why are you doing this?" I stared at her for a long time. "Do you remember the bonfire?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "The night Briar said I was the small flame." She looked away. "That was a long time ago." "Yeah," I said. "It was. I was just a kid. We were all stupid." I shrugged. "Stupid choices. Lifelong consequences. You're destroying the family name." "No," I said. "I'm just letting it rot out loud." Then she said something that stuck with me. "Briar's broke. He leveraged everything. The cars, the house, even our parents' cabin. If you take the rest of the land, he's done." I didn't say anything. But inside something shifted. I wanted more. After Ivy left, I sat alone in my office for a long time. I could have stopped. I'd already won legally. I owned the land, the ranch house, even the old gravel road their grandparents used to ride horses down. But something in me wasn't done yet. Maybe it was the years of silence. The way they ignored me like I was nothing. Or maybe it was how calm Ivy looked when she delivered the news about Briar, like she was warning me, but also hoping I'd finish him off. They'd buried my dad's name, laughed at my mom's hands, called me the small flame, like it was cute I existed at all. No, I wasn't stopping. So I made the next move personal. I bought the mortgage to Briar's house in Spokane. He'd refinanced it to fund one of his companies. I offered the bank double to transfer the note. Just like that, I became his lender. And his landlord. When the payment was 30 days late, I served notice. Not through lawyers. I went there myself. He opened the door in a t-shirt and boxers, half asleep, eyes bloodshot. "You've got 15 days to vacate," I said, handing him the notice. His mouth opened but nothing came out. He looked at the paper, then back at me. "You can't do this." "I can," I said. And I did. "You're destroying everything." "No," I said. "You already did. I'm just cleaning it up." The door slammed. Hard. I stood there for another moment before walking away. I didn't feel powerful. I felt hollow. But I kept going. Next was Tate. He had a small construction firm in Helena. Shady stuff. Under the table labor, poor permits, overbilled clients. I sent a file to the state licensing board. Everything was documented, signed, tracked. Within 3 weeks he lost his license. 2 months after that he filed for bankruptcy. Then came Elena. She ran a nonprofit that used Summer's family connections to raise money for youth education. I followed the money. Half of it was being funneled into private accounts. I sent the proof to every donor on their mailing list. She tried to claim it was a mistake. The board fired her within 48 hours. That's when my mom called. "You've made your point," she said quietly. "You can stop now." "They didn't stop when they ran us out," I said. "I know," she said. "But we left with our heads high." "You're not doing that." I didn't have an answer for that. I just listened to her breathe on the line. "I don't want their land," she said. "I never did. I just wanted peace." I nodded. "I'll get us that too." She hung up. But it stayed in my mind. My revenge had become a storm. And in the middle of it, I didn't know if I was still standing for my family, or just burning everything for the sake of watching them fall. And then I found the letter. In a sealed envelope, at the bottom of a box my father left behind, was a letter addressed to me. Handwritten. Old ink. It read, "If you ever find yourself standing over their ashes, ask yourself if your fire kept you warm, or just kept you angry. Don't let them turn you into them." It was dated 3 months before he died. That's when I knew this wasn't over. Because maybe the real revenge wasn't just burning down what they built. Maybe the real revenge was taking the one thing they never wanted me to have. Legacy. I couldn't sleep after reading my father's letter. I'd read it 5 times in a row, holding the paper so tight it crinkled in my hands. His words didn't stop echoing in my head. "If your fire kept you warm or just kept you angry." That line hit me like a punch. Was I just angry? Was this still about justice? Or was I turning into the very thing they once said I wasn't? Cold, calculated, proud? For a week I didn't return calls. I let meetings slide. I ignored emails from my legal team. Then Ivy called again. "I want to meet," she said. "Face to face. No tricks." I told her where and when. A small diner just outside Missoula, the same kind my mom used to work at. She looked different. No makeup. Old hoodie. She sat across from me, didn't order anything, just pushed a packet of sugar back and forth with her finger. "You're killing what's left of us," she said. "No," I said. "I'm setting it right. You think this is justice? It's more than I ever got from any of you." Her voice cracked. "Briar's using again. Pills. Maybe worse. Tate's been asking around about you ugly questions. He's desperate. Let them be desperate." "You don't get it," she said. "They won't stop. You think you're in control, but you've become part of the same game. You think legacy means destroying theirs." I didn't say anything. She leaned in, eyes locked on mine. "You're not our dad, you're not grandpa. You're colder than both of them ever were." And that stung more than I wanted to admit. Because part of me deep down knew she was right. I had become the wildfire. Not the strong flame that lasts. Not the one who survives. Just the one who burns. That night I went to the ranch. Alone. I hadn't been inside the main house in years. Everything smelled of dust and old pine. I walked through the halls with my phone flashlight on. Past portraits of men who thought their names meant something. Past the room where they laughed behind closed doors. Past the barn where I first learned to hide my rage in silence. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, ready to defend myself, but it was Tate. He looked rough. Hair messy, knuckles red like he'd hit something. Or someone. "You just couldn't leave it alone," he said. "You mean your mess?" I asked. "No. I mean us. Family." He stepped closer. I didn't back up. "You don't get to call it that," I said. "You lost that word when you laughed at a kid sitting by a fire." He breathed heavy. Real heavy. Eyes wild. "You're gonna give it back. All of it." "No," he lunged. Grabbed my arm. And that's when I pulled the small recorder out of my coat pocket and clicked it on. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, clear and calm, "Say that again." He froze. "This is what you've become?" I asked. The big man trying to scare the small flame? He let go. Backed off like the air had been sucked out of him. I'll ruin you, he whispered. I smiled. You already did. I'm just making sure everyone sees it. He left without another word. But the next morning, the video from the barn, his voice, his threats was on the desk of every board member from Grandpa's original estate trust. I made sure of it. That same week, the trust quietly dissolved what was left of his shares. A final vote. No press.
No ceremony.
It was mine now. All of it. But my dad's letter still haunted me. Because I had everything. And I still wasn't warm. Winter came early that year in Montana. The skies dropped a blanket of white over the land I now owned. The ranch, the fields, the timberline up to the edge of the Peaks mine. Everything the summer's name once stood on now answered to me. But I was still cold. The fire that pushed me forward had eaten through everything. It had no more fuel. I spent Christmas alone in the old house. No lights, no decorations. Just the soft hum of the wind outside, and a fire I built in the stone hearth. Not the fire of revenge. Just wood and warmth. Real fire. I thought about my father. About the man who'd never raised his voice, but left behind a letter stronger than any threat. I thought about my mother, now living quietly in a small house I bought her in Lolo. She called me sometimes, but I never told her what I was feeling. I thought about Ivy. How she looked when she realized I wasn't bluffing. She tried to warn me. Maybe even tried to stop me. She was the only one who hadn't played dirty in the end. The only one who came to talk like a human being. So I sent her a deed. A small piece of land on the south side of the ranch. Not much. Just enough to mean something. Just enough to say, I heard you. I never heard back. But she didn't reject it either. The rest of them? Gone. Briar's house in Spokane sold at auction. Rumor was he disappeared into rehab down in New Mexico. But I didn't care enough to check. Tate moved to Idaho to work construction under a fake name. Elena tried starting a new nonprofit in Boise. I sent her donors the same report as last time. She never tried again. The summer's name, the great wildfire of legacy and arrogance, had burned itself out. And all that was left standing on the mountain was me. And that's where I finally understood my father's words. I didn't need to carry their legacy. I needed to build something of my own. Not out of hate. Not from ashes. But from what I had left. So I turned the ranch into something new. I opened it to local families, turned it into a community co-op. Leased land at fair prices. Taught young people how to care for the land, not strip it. Gave scholarships in my father's name. Not Summers. Joel. The small flame, once laughed at, now lit the way for others. And it didn't roar. It burned steady, quiet. And it didn't need to be remembered as a wildfire. Because it was still burning long after the wild ones were gone.